grappling legend, Robert Drysdale. Thank you, brother. It was so great to have you hang out with you last night and to have you here in Burbank, in Los Angeles. It's been many years that we've been waiting for you to come out here. So really excited to talk to you, and really excited to talk to you about your books. And I got a few of them here. I forgot your first one, the Open Guard.
Open and Close Guard.
Open and Close Guard book. And then the Rise and Evolution of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the Triumph of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? It's your latest one, right?
Correct.
So, man, how did you get into writing your first Jiu-Jitsu book?
And first off, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been long in the making, but it's followed you for years now, so it's good to be face to face speaking. And thanks for having me. And as far as the books go, you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It's sort of an accident, really. I guess it was a lot of things happened, after my retirement. Like, it was a big change in my life, and I think one of the changes was I became interested in the history of jiu-jitsu. Like, everything started with a student of mine asked me why I didn't have more pictures on the wall like most gyms. I'm like, I'm not against having pictures on my wall. I just don't know anything about the history. I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And then my student fired back, "Aren't you a history major?" As in, if there's someone that should know this story, it's you. And I'm like, yeah. So I began with Roberto Pedreira's books. I began with Marcial Serrano's book. It's only in Portuguese. It's not in English. José Tuficairo's PhD dissertation. And I was learning there were a lot of interesting things about BJJ history people didn't know. And I decided I was going to do a documentary production about it. So I put a business plan together. I found an investor. I put the pieces together. I found a team. And all right, we're going to do this. The documentary became a very complicated issue. I'm good at following agreements, handshake or contractual. Most people are not, but I'll just leave it at that. And
what was a lot of traveling, right?
It was traveling, interview these grandmasters. So you had all these red belts in Brazil that were in their 80s and 90s, and we're talking the very first practitioners of jiu-jitsu, the original students of the Gracie Academy, and they had a story to tell. Some of these guys hadn't been interviewed in years. Some of them, most people never even heard of, and they had a very interesting story to tell. So that was the first book. It was a suggestion by Pedreira that I write an article about my experience producing a documentary. The article was supposed to be 2,000 words. Next thing you know, I'm at 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 words, and I can keep going. If I'm going to talk about this, I can talk about that. And then very quickly, I'm at 30,000 words. I'm like, if I keep going, I could write a short book, and next thing you know, I 400 or 500 page book. I wrote it fairly quickly. It was during lockdown, the first one. Real lockdown, had nothing to do. I'm typing 8-9 hours a day. I wrote it in 2-3 weeks. It's fairly quick. The editing took longer. The editing took a couple months, but the writing was fairly quick. I had nothing else to do. I'm just sitting at home alone, can't leave the house. So it was great for inspiration and just being quiet. And the world stopped. You guys remember during COVID, everything stopped. Yeah. So it was perfect for concentrating on my task. And the ideas were all very fresh on my mind, and it came out of it fairly easily, I'd say. And I just discovered that I love writing. The documentary has been a very difficult battle, but writing is easy for me because it's just me and me, and it depends on me. If it's not work, it's because I'm not doing my job. So I can just sit in front of a computer and start writing. I really enjoy the process. So the Rise and Evolution came 2 years after that. I have another draft of a book I never published. I plan on publishing down the road, but it requires a lot of editing. I put that on hold. And after that, I wrote the Rise and Evolution. That was about a year of work. I didn't hire an editor for that book. So that was probably a mistake because it was very difficult to edit it myself. My girlfriend at the time helped me. I had a student of mine who helped me as well, but none of us are editors, right? So it was an uphill battle. So you might find a typo or two in there, here and there. But I do think it's a book that says a lot about our history. I think it's fair to say it's my best book, and I don't think I'll ever write a better book than that one. I hope I do, but I don't know.
So the open and close guard, right?
Open and close guard is the first one. Yeah.
Is the first one. And the cover has a lot of Japanese, and of course old school, these masters,
correct,
grandmasters on that. So it's very focused on, we started with these interviews, right?
Yeah.
And so and then the second one, the Rise and Evolution of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kind of course the Gracies, but then focusing on Carlson Gracie, right?
Carlson Gracie, and then Carlos Gracie Jr. and the IBJJF.
Right.
I did feel that they didn't get their due credit. I do believe that the word jiu-jitsu has been thrown around for the last 100+ years. It's never had a clear definition. This is why you see these jiu-jitsu schools, jiu-jitsu. It's one of the reasons why people start calling it Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Because they want to differentiate themselves from all these other schools.
Jiu-jitsu, JU, JITCU.
These schools that survived the growth of the Kodokan and kept to their own old ways, which is essentially what we call pre-war judo, which wasn't something as organized as we think of judo today. It was something very... every group, every instructor had its own way of doing things. It was very idiosyncratic in that sense, because there was no federation or the equivalent of a Kodokan to unify the practice. Gracie family is included in this category. Early grade, the 1930s all the way to 75. That's pretty much what they're doing. They're not so different. According to Rorion Gracie himself, it's basically the same thing. His words, not mine. That they were doing what other jiu-jitsu / judo schools that were more ground-oriented were doing. It was after 75 these changes began to take place, and we'll talk about that down the road. But that was essentially the motivation was just trying to get to the bottom of these things and how the jiu-jitsu evolved away from judo, and why is it so interesting to so many people today around the world? I think that's a fascinating question, and I just fell in love with the story, and I still feel like I haven't dug enough. Like there's a lot more to be said and done, and I really enjoy that process. It's been a privilege to be able to write about it.
You have to thank, even though maybe the documentary, you're still dealing with it, that caused you to write a whole book, right?
It was like one of those bad things
now
that
we have
turned
4.
into a good thing. Like in the time that my team didn't finish editing, I managed to write 4 books. And I want to keep going, man.
Yeah.
I want to keep going. So, I guess you're made for certain things. You're not made for others. Like writing is just me and me, so it's very easy for me to do this, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the process, and I like to think I've done some good to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a community. I like to think that I've given people their due credit, starting with Carlson, of course. The first book is more focused on Jiu-Jitsu prehistory, as I like to call it, like in Brazil at least. Talks about Japanese immigration. I think we do a good job of describing the separation from judo. How it separated and why? What were the leading forces there?
There was a book, is it Mastering Jiu-Jitsu? It's like a technique book. Kenzo Gracie's on the cover. Yeah. John Danaher has the kind of the text before that, right? I think he probably wrote it, right?
I cite the book. It's in the bibliography of the last one.
Yeah, and so it for me kind of put things in perspective. Like 100 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong. 100 years ago, like basically judo, right? The way Jogoro Kano created, right? He took away the stuff that didn't work and the quick kill stuff, and so they could train it like Rondori trained with it realistically, and then all of his students beat the old school guys that trained the jiu-jitsu, the traditional jiu-jitsu, and then he called it judo.
Yeah, he modified it because the practice of jiu-jitsu, in his own words, was associated with like circus and vulgarity and professional fights. It's very interesting because we have some similar motion happening in 2025. It's becoming very sensationalist and circus-oriented. It's almost like we've gone full circle. But he wanted an educational practice, something that could be put in schools, something that parents would go, I want my children practicing that, which when you think about it is an incredible feat. And I'm not an expert in this leg of the story. I don't read Japanese. I know, only through secondary sources do I know this story. But I think it's incredible. I think it's remarkable that Jigoro Kano manages to convince a Ministry of Education and parents around the world that teaching children how to fight is a good idea. When you think about it, like, hold on, these people are modernized. They're trying to abandon their feudal past. They're trying to get rid of that whole association with the samurais and swords and violence. They're trying to be gentlemen. They're trying to be European-like gentlemen. And this guy comes along and says, I'm going to teach your children how to throw other children on their heads, and that's going to be great for their education. And he manages to do that.
Yeah.
And essentially what he created the very space in which we exist. The whole idea of martial arts as a practice, as an educational practice, that's from Jigoro. He's not the first one to do it, but he created that space in modern times for us to be able to have a business. So if parents bring their children to your gym today to train, you think Jigoro Kano, he's the one that convinced the world that was a great idea. And I think that's beyond anything else he did. I think that is his greatest contribution to martial arts.
Yeah, my Japanese friends, when I go to Japan, like samurais are crazy. They don't like something or they feel disrespected. They'll just like cut off your head, right? Slice you up, you know? That was the world.
I just lost the sound here.
I just lost the sound. Sorry. It's okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so like just the fact that that was the scene, right? But now then Jigoro Kano came in and made it so people could, more of a have like a character training thing, right? Remarkable.
And exactly. And he, obviously there's going to be some agreements and some disagreements. So there are people that disagree with Jigoro Kano. So for example, there were men who resisted the stand-up orientation of judo.
Right.
There were men who wanted it more ground-oriented.
Right.
There were schools that had a more ground-oriented systems,
So like 100 years ago, like judo was like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
It was, it's very ironic because I've had this discussion with judokas, but I think it would be fair to say that, in its early stages, judo was closer to what we call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today than it is to Olympic judo. Mm-hmm. The stand-up orientation was a later product of development of judo over time. The ground artists pretty much lost a battle and they eliminated the wrist lock, the shoulder lock, the foot lock, yada, yada, yada. I mean, they're bringing it back slowly, but for a big chunk of judo's history, like the ground was very limited. Everyone knows this. And it's interesting, it's precisely within that space that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu exists.
It was like from the 20s to like the 50s, right? When did they start judo? Olympic judo? 50s, right?
1882 officially is the starting point of judo. Like that's when Jigoro Kano started teaching.
And the Olympics
Olympics is going to be 1960.
Right, 50s, 60s.
The World Championship, I believe, was like 56 or something. I can't remember now, 56. The first Olympics would have been either 64 or 68 now. I can't remember.
But his dream was to make it an Olympic sport, right?
I don't think initially. I think he just wanted it in schools.
Right.
Yeah, but I think his ambition grew, and later he's like, "Oh, we can get this in the Olympics. That's the fastest way to spread judo," and he was right, and it worked. And as a politician, I think Jigoro Kano is outstanding.
Yeah, as a manager, right?
And I, judokas may not like it when I say this. I don't think his contribution was really as a teacher or as a competitor. Obviously, now he was not a fighter, but as a politician, like he did a lot. And I think that's an important role. I don't think we should neglect the role of politics. It could have a positive. Typically, I think of politics as something negative because it's it is typically corrupting, right? But it could be positive too. I think Jigoro Kano shows that. Like we have children practicing martial arts, and he was right. It is a good school for life, and these ideas make it to Brazil through Japanese immigration. And this leads to, because the Kodokan was not established in Brazil in the 1930s, these two brothers, there were more of them, there were 5 of them, but mainly 2.
Carlos and Helio.
Yeah. Well, George initially too, but George went.
He was the oldest brother, right?
Yeah, he was. No, he was. Carlos is the oldest, but George was the more of the fighter, hands-on kind of guy. But he does his own thing. He becomes a little separate from his brothers for a variety of reasons. They didn't get along. But Carlos and Helio, they stick to their vision. It's like, we're going to do something different. Carlos is a very ambitious man. Like, we're going to do it my way or the highway. And I don't care what those Japanese guys are saying or doing. And they began to separate themselves from judo slowly. I believe 1931 is when they opened the Gracie Academy. The date 1925, by the way, is incorrect. People get mad at me when I say it, but I can prove it. I have pictures, documents.
1925 was not.
There's Helio, according to himself. Helio Gracie, according to himself, not me. Helio Gracie. He's saying he had never heard of jiu-jitsu prior to 1929. Okay, so the first time he heard of jiu-jitsu was when his brother Carlos fought Gio Mori. That happened in 29 and 1930. So he's either talking about a match that took place in 29 or 30, meaning he had never heard of jiu-jitsu prior to that. So his acquaintance with jiu-jitsu is something really, that took place in the 30s. And that's the beginning of the separation with judo because they're no longer agreeing with the rules.
I have a question, just to interrupt you, but why did they call it jiu-jitsu, not judo, right?
Very good question.
In Brazil, why did the Gracie call it jiu-jitsu, not judo? Because I have a story from, I don't know if it's true or not. You know best, probably, out of all these books.
Man, that's such a because the people get lost in labels. It's very
because
easy to get lost in labels.
The judo federation in Brazil is very strong as well, right?
Yes. But again, remember the first. I'll try to summarize as best I can. The term jujutsu. I'll say jujutsu just to differentiate from Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Okay, but it's the same kanjis. But the term jiu-jitsu is an eclectic term. Like, think of it as an umbrella term. They used the word then, like late in the 19th century, early in the 20th century, the way we use the word martial art, the term martial arts. So think of it something, it's not a specific practice, it's not a school, it's not a style, it's basically martial arts. That's what jiu-jitsu is during that early period. The first wave, so Kano has one jiu-jitsu school, Kano Jiu-Jitsu. He will later brand it judo. Initially, it was just Kano Jiu-Jitsu. That's what everyone called it. It's kind of like saying no-gi and grappling.
Right.
Or no-gi and senkimono. Or submission wrestling, no-gi. It's all the same, okay? But the term Jiu-Jitsu was more popular. So the first wave of Japanese immigrants to travel to Europe, United States, and Brazil, they're using the term Jiu-Jitsu, even though they're already teaching Kano style.
Oh, okay.
Later, Kano changes his term from Kano Jiu-Jitsu. He never called it that, but he makes it official. What we do is judo. Even though he didn't create the term judo, Kito-ryu, which is a style Jigoro Kano's from, already called it judo. Like, Kito-ryu was known as judo prior to Jigoro Kano, but he used the term judo. But many waves of Japanese that were here, they slowly transitioned to judo. Some of them don't. Some of them continue to use the term jiu-jitsu. The Brazilian family, the Gracie family, they did not transition. They kept using the term jiu-jitsu because that's what they were already marketing themselves around that term. They saw the term judo as something different because remember, judo is undergoing transformations.
Right.
So the new wave of Japanese that are coming, it's not exactly the same thing that they had done. There are changes. These things are, you got a very important thing to understand in this discussion is not to get married to labels, is to look at the content
Right.
and not the label, right? And the content is changing over the years. It's never the same. So if I get a bottle of Coke and I pour it out and I put Sprite in it and I give it to you to drink, are you drinking Coke or Sprite? You're drinking Sprite, but the label says Coke. So it's important not to get lost in these things, because this is a huge part. People have a hard time understanding this because they're getting lost in labels.
When did he start to when did Kano start to send his disciples around the world? What years?
I'm not going to remember years here, man. I want to say early in the Maeda 1904, 1905.
Okay, so early
in the 20th century.
Yeah.
And
because he came to the U.S. first, right? And
Maeda came to the U.S. first. Eventually Brazil. Same thing with Gio Mori, which is, in my opinion, more significant to BJJ's history than Maeda. But a lot of these guys get buried because they don't market themselves, so we don't hear about them. And that's like the key. If there's any takeaway from this story to me, has been memory has to do with marketing more than merit, unfortunately. And a lot of these guys that do a lot don't get remembered, and the guys that just spend all their time and energy marketing themselves are the ones that do. So they're the ones that, quote unquote, make history.
But the teacher, right, of the Gracies was Maeda, right?
Well, yes. So this is a complicated story. But Maeda, when he goes to Brazil, he's practically retired. He's not very active teaching.
A little bit older.
The way I describe Maeda's role, because I think he's been somewhat to create a connection with Japan, which is ambiguous. Brazilians are very ambiguous about this because they want to create a connection to the Kodokan while simultaneously denying that what we do is a variant of Kodokan Judo. And you can't have it both ways. You can't insist in creating a connection with Maeda, who was a Kodokan black belt, while simultaneously saying it's not Kodokan Judo. Oh, it's one or the other. Otherwise, it's a paradox. You can't have it both ways. So this is something that they've never quite figured out.
I heard that he had left the Kodokan for a minute.
No, he didn't leave the Kodokan. He was fighting professionally, which is something Jigoro Kano frowned upon. He wasn't happy about that, so he didn't get his stripes, when he should have. He got them eventually later on, but there's some politics. There's still going on. If you read my interview with Satoshi Ishii, he's still dealing with that. Like, the Kodokan doesn't stripe him because he's fighting MMA. So little things like that. So these guys dealt with these problems then as well. But Maeda has 5 students in Brazil that he promotes, very likely to black belt. We can't confirm it's a black belt because of the language that the reporter uses in the article in question, but very likely to black belt. Dr. Matheus Pereira, Rafael Gomes, Valdemar Lopes, Guilherme de la Roque, and Jacinto Ferro. Out of these 5, very likely promoted to black belt, Jacinto Ferro was his main guy. He was a known athlete. He's the guy that's running class. So Maeda opens a dojo, and he goes worry about Japanese immigration and land distribution. That's where the money is. So he's retired. He's not looking to fight and teach. He lets Jacinto Ferro run class. Carlos was Jacinto's student. This is documented. This is not controversial. People think it's controversial. It's not controversial. It's documented. Now, whether Carlos had classes with Maeda as well, it's possible. It could be, but history is not written with could-be's and possible and speculation and possibilities. History must be written with documented, right? It must be written with facts.
I've seen the headlines where they were like, oh, Robert Drysdale says they weren't direct students of Maeda.
And it's not relevant.
Right?
It's not, they were, look, let's say you got one of your brown belts running white belt class, and you teach class every now and then. But your white belt goes around town saying they train under Alberto Crane, even though the brown belt taught them 99% of their classes.
Right.
It's not a hill to die over. It does not discredit anyone.
No,
but it does.
For sure.
It's ironic because
just give credit where credit's due, right?
I get called anti-Brazilian, but they're the ones that are saying that they're outraged that a Brazilian taught Carlos. Like, what's so terrible about a Brazilian having taught Carlos Gracie? What's so terrible about that? There's nothing wrong with it. So what?
Yeah,
it doesn't change. It doesn't discredit him. It doesn't take away his merits. But if I'm going to write history, I'm going to do it the right way. I'm not going to discredit someone simply because.
How did you find all this info? Like, where did you look?
Oh, it's Roberto Pedreiro's books, one. Okay. Marcial Serrano and Tufi's dissertation. Those were my initial sources. And then I realized that most of these sources were coming out of the Brazilian National Library. They digitized their files in 2012.
Okay.
So now you can
go
into
newspapers and stuff.
Yes, but before you had to go to the physical files, which makes it almost impossible because they're spread all over the country. That's why no one could write anything on it. It was so difficult to write anything on jiu-jitsu history. But after 2012, they digitized the files. It's a search engine. So you type in Carlos Gracie, Belém do Pará, 1920 to 1930, or 1910 to 1920. You're going to have whatever's there is going to come up, right? And you just got to go through these files one by one. It's a lot of work. I didn't.
Crazy detective work.
No, I don't mind giving myself credit for what I did do, and I did. Like, for example, the 5 Brazilians that were promoted by Maeda. That's my discovery. There are some other discoveries that I made, but most of them were already in Roberto Pedreiro's books. I would hate to take credit for something I didn't do. Like, the heavy lifting when it comes to research was his. I did verify all the sources that were Portuguese. I'm fluent in Portuguese, so it's easy, and I don't mind verifying. Like, I'm familiar with those primary sources, but when it comes to, for example, the Japanese leg of the story, I don't read Japanese. I don't have access to those stories, so I'm completely reliant on secondary sources, which makes me not a reliable speaker on the topic. I don't even like to talk about that leg of the journey because I'm not an expert at it. I know very little about it, and what I do know is through other sources. But when it comes to the Brazilian leg of the journey, I feel more confident because I've read the secondary and primary. I'm more familiar with that story, and I've read the original. So it was a lot of work initially, but I liked it. It was like detective work, man. It's like you find something that it's like finding a needle in the haystack. You're like, this is important, you know, and it adds something to jiu-jitsu history.
It's like history is written by the victors, right? And so people want to put their spin on it to make it like to what it is what it is. But it's cool to go back in time and be like, oh, actually, it was like this.
It's interesting because, and I think this lies part of because I've questioned myself many times, Alberto, like, why am I doing this? Because I'm not making money from this. Like, this is I've created a lot of enemies. I made some friends too.
We talked about that last night, right? A little bit.
Yeah, like, what's my motivation, man? Like, do I have like some resentment in me? Like, for example, this has been suggested, like, oh, you lost 3 times to Roger Gracie, and that's why you're resentful and you're trying to avenge, you know. And I'm like, it's coming from hate. Like, they're suggesting that it's coming from a place of jealousy and hate. And whenever I hear these things, well, it's possible. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm envious. Maybe I'm just jealous and I'm a hater. Could be. So I look inside and I go, let's put this to the test. What happens every time I see Roger Gracie? Am I angry at him? I don't know. I look, I go, man right there. Yeah. Incredible. Like, I admire him.
Yeah.
I was joking with one of my students the other day. I joked that I am immortal who climbed Mount Olympus. I battled Zeus and I lost. But I climbed Mount Olympus. I climbed it 3 times to battle him, and I lost all 3, but I lost to what I consider to be the greatest grappler of all time.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't think there's right. And when I see Bochecha, I'm happy. I'm like, this guy's got 13 world titles. And I see Lucas Lepri, like when I see Rafa Mendes, I'm always like, when I got to speak to Marcelo Garcia for the first time a few months ago, and it's like, man, this is one of my heroes. I think he's got the most beautiful, next to Mika Galvão. Yeah. Marcelo Garcia's got the most beautiful jiu-jitsu I've ever seen. So I admire this. I don't have an issue with people who accomplish things the right way. But when people cut corners, they cut the line, and they don't follow the meritocracy route, I think that bothers me a little bit. So I think somewhat of my motivation lies there, and just like the way my brain works, I've always been that way. I don't mind people getting credit for what they did, but it bothers me when they get credit for what they didn't do. I think part of the motivation too was when my career ended. It didn't really end on. I ended with a victory, but prior to that, I had been cut from the UFC for failing a drug test. You know, and when I started jiu-jitsu, my dream was really to be a UFC champion. Like IBJJF and ADCC were stepping stones to be in UFC. Right. That was my goal. When I saw Royce Gracie, I was like, that's who I want to be.
That was the era, right? Like Fabricio Verdum was like really the one. Is he the only one that did that?
Now,
no, Mackenzie Dern. Yes,
them too. And
that's right.
That was my that was my dream.
Kids, like everybody's like, I'm gonna win the IBJJF, the world, Black World. I'm gonna win the ADCC, and then I'm gonna win UFC or Pride at the time.
But that was the
and
triple crown,
actually, what's his name? Did Fabricio Verdum win the Pride belt ever?
I think he won Strikeforce, but not the Pride. I can't remember now. Maybe he did win Pride. I can't remember.
He did it though. He did it.
But that was the goal,
did the triple crown.
So I make it to UFC. My record at the time was I think like 6 or 7-0. I had won every match by first round submission, and I'm like I was a prospect in UFC. And then I one day do a blood test. My levels come back at 156 nanomilligrams per decimilliliters, which is the testosterone levels of a 12-year-old girl, and I'm in the UFC. So I get on the prescription. Right, it was TUE at the time. It was okay as long as you met the standard. So
yeah, they changed the rules.
And then they changed the rules, and I kept taking it. I didn't stop. So I'm wrong. But I got caught. They cut me, and the reaction, man, it was two. One was of profound shame. Now I look back, I look at things different. That's why I can speak about these things so openly, because in a way, I'm almost grateful, thankful that these things happened to me, and it was the end of my dream, and I did it to myself, and I have only myself to blame. I can't blame anyone. I can't blame the rules. I broke the rules. I knew what the rules were. I knew I lied. But the onslaught, the public onslaught even for people that were close to me, even from friends, like, hold up here. So you're telling me that you liked me because I was on my way to do something great, not because of who I am? You start looking at your friends differently all of a sudden, because a lot of people turned their back on me, and I saw the world very differently from then onwards. And I realized that I had become known as a liar. That's what I was known for. That was my reputation now. Despite my life on the mats and a dedicated life to jiu-jitsu and to, winning tournaments and doing things the right way, and I had done everything right up to then. And I did something wrong, I got caught, and now all of that is thrown in the trash, and I'm known as a liar. I think at least part of my motivation writing these books is that I didn't want to be known as someone who was a liar. I wanted to be known as someone who spoke the truth. And my heart was too broken to keep fighting. I fought one more time just out of pride. I'm not going to end my career on a negative note. I owe that to myself. I'm passing the drug test. I won the LFA belt. It was a legacy at the time. That was it. I'm done. I'm never fighting again. But I still had that little voice in my head going, you're a liar. And I was profoundly ashamed of myself, and I still am. I still carry that with me. And I think the books in some way were a reaction to that. They, at least part of the motivation lied in, I want to be known as someone who speaks the truth. And whatever the cost is to me or to others, that's a secondary thought. The truth comes first. To the best of my ability to speak it, I am not objective as I would like to be. I'm human, I'm flawed. I would like to say I carry no politics in me, but we all do. But I think that the pursuit of objective history telling is superior to the alternative of having a theory before the facts are known, which is what a lot of people do when they're writing history. And I did, to the best of my ability, I believe, question myself while I was writing these books. And it's every paragraph I'm writing with a little voice in the back of my head going, am I being biased here? Am I being fair? Am I being unfair? And I think sometimes I might have been. The readers can be the judge of it. But I did my best to be as fair as possible to everyone, regardless of surname. And I think that's what upsets people, regardless. Because you wouldn't judge someone on their skin color. You wouldn't judge them on their nationality. You wouldn't judge them on their religion. You wouldn't judge them on their sexuality. So why should I judge someone positively or negatively on their surname? That doesn't make any sense to me. So that means that some members of the Gracie family are going to be put on pedestals. And I did that. I put Royce Gracie way up there. I put Carlos Gracie Jr. way up there. I put Carlson Gracie way up there. But when it comes to guys like Helio and Hickson, I respect them. I think they do, but I don't think that they did as much as some of these other members of the Gracie family. But they got put on pedestals doing less, in my opinion. I think, I'm not saying they did. Let me rephrase what I said.
We don't know. It's different times, right?
Different, yes. But
they had different roles.
I think that, not that they didn't have their credit. Of course they do. I want to rephrase that. They have their merits, of course. But it's been disproportionate when you consider what Carlson did, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The man, like most Americans, never even heard of him.
Yeah.
And this is the guy who, to me, is most responsible for creating the world we live in, followed by Hollis Gracie and Carlos Gracie Jr. So those three members of the Gracie family I just mentioned are fundamental to creating the world we live in.
Yeah.
But you don't hear that. All you hear is Helio, and I think Helio was an essential figure for a big chunk of the development of jiu-jitsu in Brazil in the 20th century.
Right.
But you got to remember, Helio didn't even like competition. He liked private lessons, self-defense, rich people. It's not what we're practicing. He didn't even like what we do.
Right, it's a different.
It was
kind
a
of
different world.
lineage in a way.
It has a same genealogy.
Right, but
there's a
different.
split. There's a
for
fork
sure,
there in the 70s where Carlson goes.
The Valente brothers, like they do the private lesson,
Correct.
the Halle Gracie style.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
That is how they tend to each their own.
Yeah.
But you can't convince me that what they're teaching is the same thing you're teaching.
Right.
We're just using the same word, jiu-jitsu, but they're fundamentally different cultural terms in terms of demographics and methodological terms and technical terms in everything but name. It's like, again, let's not get lost in labels. Let's not look at labels. Let's look at content. The content of what they teach is fundamentally different from what me and you teach.
So Halle Gracie started the whenever it was 1931 whatever it is, and then Carlson Gracie, right? He loses the match and they bring in Carlson, and then Holz Gracie. You see pictures of them training together, and that was we talked about like the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu culture and the Copacabana style of how it changed, like that culture, right? Yeah. Like Halle Gracie, very military style. Yeah. And then it shifted to that, right? Yeah. Which I think we live, right? Yeah. We just had the Acai Jungle Cafe breakfast, but we're in that. That's what I came up with, right?
I normally say this cultural aspect is very important because the culture is a big part of jiu-jitsu's success around the world. A lot of people neglect it; they take it for granted.
100%.
But this beach/surf culture, this is Copacabana, and Carlson Gracie, later followed by his younger brother Hollis Gracie. Hollis, depends how you pronounce it, right? They brought the beaches of Copacabana, the south zone of Rio de Janeiro, onto the mats. Now, you have to have been to Copacabana to know what I'm talking about. You don't get it. I recommend everyone who trains jiu-jitsu should visit Copacabana, the south zone of Rio, at least once in their life. Because if you just spend a week there, you'll understand Brazilian jiu-jitsu so much better because the relaxed manners, the acai, the flip-flops, that environment that I've seen replicated in Japan. I've seen it in Chechnya. I've seen it in France. I've seen it everywhere. Yeah. It's like Brazil managed to export the best they had to offer with jiu-jitsu as a vehicle because jiu-jitsu, the art itself, sure, it's Japanese. Yeah. It is not a Brazilian art. But I think the greatest addition, the two additions, and the second book talks a little bit about, so the rule set was one, the ground orientation, we can talk about that later, but it was the culture, because that made it less militaristic. So if you're 5 minutes late, no one's mad at you, you're hugging your teammates, you can call your sensei your master, and there's certainly a hierarchy there, but he's like a friend of yours too. Like you guys go out for dinner together, it's something very, it's very surf-like, very Brazil. I don't want to say, it's surf, sure, but it's very Copacabana. And I think that people that come from Rio understand perfectly well what I'm talking about. I think it's the best that Brazil has to export, and they these guys did that through jiu-jitsu. I think that's a huge part of jiu-jitsu success. Because if you look at the techniques, they're in catch wrestling has them, Kosen Judo has them, right? Like Sambo has them. Most of the techniques are virtually identical. They're the same, right? Judo has them. But what's the difference? Like, why is Brazilian jiu-jitsu so appealing to so many people? And I think the culture is a huge part of it.
Copacabana, what do you call it?
Copacabana, South Zone.
South Zone culture?
South Zone culture, Zona Sul, they say.
Yeah, because like if the south of Rio, right? Yeah, the north, there's like the big mountains, and the other side is like the poorer areas, right? And then the South Zone is all nice, like the Copacabanas, the Ipanemas, all the way. If you keep going down, you end up at Baja, right?
Yeah.
Baja
and it's a very... it's my favorite place in the world, man. If it weren't for the crime is a problem, it's Rio. I think Rio's the best place on earth, man.
One of the most beautiful cities in the world.
Beautiful people. You go on a Sunday afternoon, and you see tens of thousands of people on the beach jogging, kids playing soccer, like healthy people everywhere, live music everywhere. It's like life's a party there, 24/7. Sometimes like you can walk on a Tuesday, 2 in the afternoon. And there's like live music going on and people having fun, and just like it's a 24-hour party. Yeah, I just love, and I do think that made its way into jiu-jitsu.
That's the vibe, right? That's the vibe that's been exported all around the world. Caucasus, like Kazakhstan,
No, 100%.
everywhere,
100%.
everywhere.
I was interviewing
Middle East,
Adam
right?
Brzezinski for this book, and he said he think that one of the reasons why
For which one?
the second, the third one. What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
And he said that one of the reasons why he thinks that BJJ is so popular in Poland is because it gives them a little bit of that lifestyle that they. It's like you're living that beachside lifestyle, but Poland is typically a colder country. It's not known for. It has beaches, but it's not known for its beaches. But it gives them a little bit of that lifestyle, like warmer places, and there's an appeal to that. And I do think that's true for other places as well, because you just idealize like life on the beach and, you know.
Carefree, right? Happiness,
Yes,
peace.
Yes.
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind, all that.
Which jiu-jitsu gives you, right? Ultimately, when you train it.
I tell people the biggest benefit of jiu-jitsu is not self-defense, it's not fitness, it's mental health. Community and mental health. That's why people stay. People come for fitness and self-defense. They stay for community and mental health.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's it. You know, that's it. Copacabana. I don't think of Copacabana, but like you said, because Carlson starting his gym in Copacabana with holes.
And that was the battle with Helio. I mean, that was the problem, is that Helio liked to teach private lessons, self-defense to rich people.
Military style.
Military style. Like, and that works. Like, I'm not against that. To each their own. Carlson goes, I'm going to lower the membership. In fact, as long as you're a warrior, you can train for free. He didn't even charge most people. It was about performance, not about money. And that's why, to me, Carlson Gracie is an ideal martial artist. He's a superior martial artist to all of us because he was doing it for the right reasons. It was about performance. It was about the athlete. It was about the growth of the art. It was about the technical evolution. It was not about money. It was never about money with him. He died broke. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying you should die broke. But you must admire a man who puts the art ahead of money. He says the art and the consequence and development of the art are superior to enriching yourself. And he goes, jiu-jitsu is for everyone as long as you can withstand the meritocratic environment I'm creating here. So if you didn't have the heart to stay in there, it was hard training. Like, oh, I'm sensitive, I can't, out the door, but I'm paying. It doesn't matter. The standard is here. You have to meet the standard to survive this room. And I love that about jiu-jitsu, right? And that's why the jiu-jitsu, that's one reason I'm somewhat critical of commercialization, because sometimes we're lowering the standards to meet a broader audience. And I don't think we should ever do that. So Carlson kept the bar up here. You have to meet the standard. He changes it technically because once you're in a group format and you got lots of randori, or hinya, as he would call it, you're going to have very rapid evolution because there's only one way to get good. You can't just drill moves. You actually have to roll live. And he was insistent in competition. A lot of people don't like competition. They think, oh, there are no points in the streets. Yeah, but me holding mount for 3 seconds teaches me to control mount where I could punch you in the face. This is teaching you how to fight in a way where you don't actually get hit. Competition does teach you how to fight.
He was all about competition.
He was all about
He brought out, you know, the best, the competition of Carlos Gracie Jr., everybody.
Well, and another part of this history that's very important is Hollis Gracie is his younger brother. You cannot, isn't it interesting? You cannot evolve without a rival. It is a rival that will push you. So if Carlson Gracie's guys are dominating too much, there's no incentive for them to grow, right? So what Hollis does is they're training in the same building. It's interesting. They share the same mats. They have 2 different gyms in one building. I have a story
when I was going to open up a school. Like, he was telling me the story because there was it was a Gracie ball at the time to open up near me. It was too close to his school. So he's like, listen, when I was coming up, I shared. It was one mat with me and my brother Carlson. Yeah. One phone, right? Yeah. And so he focused more. He did Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I did Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever, something like that. And he focused more on answering the phone. At the beginning, his classes got full, and mine were like smaller. But with time, I focused just on the class and teaching and doing a good job. And with time, my class got full. You know? So just focus on doing a good job, and everybody will be okay.
Yeah, but I think it's remarkable because you think brothers fight a lot.
Right.
Brothers fight. Okay? So these guys are brothers. They're sharing a building. They're rivals. They're competing against each other. Their students are trying to kill each other in competition.
Carlson talks smack to him all day long.
All day long. But it doesn't get hostile. It's like this. I call it a brotherly rivalry, and I think that is remarkable. It's a very underplayed aspect of the history of jiu-jitsu is that these 2 guys could share a building and be friends, rival but friends. It's kind of what it was with you on the mat.
I was a student, right, of Carlos Gracie, the lineage, right? And we would, Gracie Ball, when we go against Carlson, you elevate, right? You're like, you have to beat them.
You have to, because
you have to beat them. You're representing.
But it was all jiu-jitsu. We were all brothers.
Right.
We all represented the same
when
flag.
When we passed away, like it was
everyone was sad.
Everybody was sad.
Because his team was the dominant team for decades in Brazil. And it wasn't until Hollis later, Carlos Gracie Jr. picks up that group, most of that group at least, and continues to be the rivals that BJJ needed to evolve. So when I say that the development, evolution of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu parts from the rivalry between Carlson and Hollis, later Carlos Gracie Jr., this is no exaggeration. Like, it is that rivalry that creates the dynamics that led to the world we have today. Because everyone go, oh, Jiu-Jitsu's great. But why is it great? Why is it so much fun? Why is this so appealing to all of us? There's a genealogy here. Let's trace that genealogy. And what I am
goes back
arguing
to Carlson,
for,
right?
It goes back to Carlson and Hollis and a radical change that BJJ underwent in the 1970s. Yeah. I'm not neglecting what preceded them. They have a background. They did learn at the original Gracie Academy. But a younger generation of members of the Gracie family put their foot down and say, we're going to do it this way. We're going to do it different. Just like Carlos and Helio had done to judo in the 1930s. Right. Their children did to them in the 1970s. We're going to do it differently. And there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. And when you interview these guys, you can see them talking about self-defense, but they're slowly abandoning it. So there's a moment there where these things are converging. They're doing both models, the self-defense model and the competition model. But at some point, they just go more and more competition, less and less self-defense. So much so that very few people are advocating for self-defense other than the really old-timers or like the die-hard fans of that original model. But it's a minority in the community. I'm maybe 1%, maybe 5% of the community. The vast majority of the jiu-jitsu community around the world is practicing essentially Carlson Gracie jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Like I did a podcast with Saulo years ago, Saulo Ribeiro, and he's like, yeah, the Gracie Baja, they brought out the best in me. And so that was, he became good because he had those guys to go against. Yeah. And so this whole everything in jiu-jitsu, like the 50 years, the triumph of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it's all because of all these pieces, right?
All these pieces. And in this book, I'm glad you brought that up, the triumph of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, because I try to tell the story through pictures. Of why. Sure.
Really cool just cover, with all these.
I try to tell the story through pictures. Yeah, it's just
Carlson Gracie.
Yeah, Carlson Gracie, Zé Beleza, Carlos Gracie Jr., Osvaldo Alves, Jacaré, Royler Gracie, Comprido Roleta, Royler Gracie, De La Riva, Carlson, Valdemar, Carlos Gracie, Carlson Gracie, Helio Gracie, Carlson Gracie, Roger Gracie, and Jacaré. So just before anyone calls me an anti-Gracie, I think I have like 10 Gracies on the cover here. Yeah, I just hate that association because I don't think it does justice to what I've written. But I find myself defending myself against a completely false accusation. So I just like to remind people of these things. I really like. I think this, and I say 50 years because in August last year, that's when I released the book. It marked 50 years of the 1975 rule set, which is the rule set that gave BJJF ground. Yes, essentially the IBJJF rule set gave its ground orientation. 1975. Yeah, 1975. Prior to that, it was 1-for-1. The ratio of stand-up and ground was 1-for-1. Right? So it was much closer to pre-war judo, which, 50-50 kind of approach to combat. And I strongly believe that the evidence here is overwhelming to make that case, that BJJ is something a lot younger than people realize. It has a prehistory. It has a genealogy. I'm not denying that. Just like judo is part of its genealogy. The original Gracie Academy is also part of its genealogy. There's no denying that. These guys came out of that gym for sure, but they modified it, much like the Gracie brothers did in the 1930s.
Was it the Eastern European? One of those websites that they like the clickbait, the Eastern headlines, European, right? Yeah. And jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, that website. And they were talking about how the FADA, the whole FADA thing is which is like the lineage of like GFT and stuff, right? Rodolfo Vieira and all those guys. How nobody knew about them until they built that highway, probably going into Baja, right? Yeah. Before that, like nobody really knew about them. Or that lineage.
They were isolated in the north zone of Rio.
North zone, south zone is all the beaches.
Bento That's where Ronaldo, the soccer players from that neighborhood. It's a very poor neighborhood in Rio. And they pioneered jiu-jitsu for poor people. A lot of successful BJJ athletes coming out of Brazil are coming out of these things they call projects.
Yeah.
Which is like, a small little gym up one of the slums. Or I had one in Brazil. I had 50 kids training for free under me. And a lot of the most talented athletes coming out of Brazil are coming out of these projects. Well, Fada inaugurated that. He's not a pioneer of the development of jiu-jitsu in the sense where Helio and Carlos were, or later Carlson and Hollis, but I think his story is interesting, not because it really isn't a lineage outside of the Gracie family. A lot of people say, oh, it's a lineage that has not, outside of it. It's not true. Luis França, Fada's coach, was a student of the Gracie Academy. So it's all Gracie. There's no lineage in Brazil. Even the ones in the Northeast that were inaugurated by Takeo Yano, a judo black belt, he inaugurated it next to George Gracie. So indirectly, it's also, it all goes back to the Gracie family. There's no way around that. But with the Fada, I think what they pioneered was jiu-jitsu for the the underprivileged and the disabled. This is something that wasn't common in jiu-jitsu then, and in that way they were and they were rivals to the original Gracie Academy, because you need rivals. You can't grow without rivals. There's no evolution without someone trying to beat you. That's how evolution works. There must be a threat out there for you to develop superior offense and defense. And I think that the Fadas, that was their contribution. They're still there. I visited their gym for the first book. We interview his nephew and one of his main red belts. It's a beautiful story. It just added to the.
Was it the '80s? The whole jiu-jitsu luta libre rivalry.
I want to say it started in the '80s. You don't see much of it in the '70s, but in the '80s, and again, they needed those rivals. It was part of the whole.
Could you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know. So history of luta livre in Brazil is somewhat convoluted to me. It's not clear to me. I think it overlaps with the development of what we now call Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu more than people think. So, for example, if you pick up the manual of the '67, and I believe the '75 manual as well of their federation, they refer to no-gi as luta livre brasileira. That's what they don't say. They don't say sem kimono, no-gi. They say luta livre brasileira, which that's what they call no-gi. No-gi was luta livre, which is basically free fight, or what became pro wrestling in the U.S. It's from like a Brazilian form of catch wrestling. Now, the origin of catch wrestling in Brazil, there were Americans visiting. I suspect that's why Brazilians don't call the armbar Jujigatame or chave de braço. They say army lock. The knee bar is leg lock. Isn't that what they say?
Yeah.
The Americana.
Leggy locky.
Leggy locky. So this is all coming from, I suspect, I can't prove it, but I think it's coming from catch wrestlers. I think they're borrowing terminology that catch wrestlers were using. So there's a lot of overlapping there. The rivalry was someone that if jiu-jitsu wanted to prove itself in the ring, it was either capoeira or luta livre. Those were the main martial arts in Brazil. Taekwondo, karate, kung fu guys, they wouldn't show up. They wouldn't fight. The luta livre guys would. The capoeira guys would. So a big chunk of the history, the capoeira were the rivals. Later, it was the luta livre guys. And then that culminated in the '91 event, which was the precursor to the UFC, really.
Right.
No one could convince me that's not where Horian got the idea from. Because remember, Horian Gracie came to the United States 78, 79. And he didn't start promotion. He was just promoting traditional Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, self-defense with ground, some stand-up, some ground. That was his model. And then after '91, after that, he was on national television in Brazil, 3 luta livre representatives versus 3 jiu-jitsu representatives. It blew up in Brazil. People were very interested in jiu-jitsu in Brazil after that. So Horian goes, like, we got to do something. Until 2 years later, what does he do?
UFC. 93.
So, and this is, I would like to investigate more.
What were the fighters that
Fábio Gurgel, Walides Mayu, Murilo Bustamante.
Yeah,
those are the 3
he's on here.
Yeah, Murilo's there on the cover as well. Murilo and Liborio.
Yeah. Carlson. It was pretty much Carlson training all these guys, right?
And Fábio was training with he went to train with Carlson because everyone knew,
of course,
that Carlson was the most experienced fighter in the whole family. Yeah. If you were interested in this, anyone who's interested in this, if you look up Carlson Gracie versus Valdemar Santana, I can't remember the title of the video on YouTube, but there's a fight from 1956 between Carlson Gracie and Valdemar Santana. It's actually beautiful. I refer to them as proto-UFC fighters, because you can see the level in that fight in 1956 was higher, technically, in my opinion, than what we saw in the early UFCs in 93, 94.
Bare knuckle headbutts.
Bare knuckle headbutts. But man, you have to watch Carlson's stance, the distancing. It was almost like an MMA fight in 2025. Not as sophisticated, of course. It is less sophisticated. The level's gone up since there's no doubt. But considering we're talking 1956, it's actually pretty impressive. One thing that a judo friend of mine brought to my attention, I didn't notice this first. Notice that Carlson is hitting uchimatas left and right. He hits uchimatas on Valdemar Santana left and right side. Like, Rob, you know how many judokas, high-level judokas, can do that on both sides? Very, very few. Suggesting that these guys were much better at stand-up than we give them credit for. Because remember, 1956, their approach was still what? 50-50.
Yeah.
It was not ground-oriented. The ground orientation was something that came after 1975 because of the rule set.
The rule
They're no longer awarding 1 point for takedown, 1 point for mount. Now it's 2 points for takedown, 4 for mount. That changes everything. That changes, that redirects the evolution of the art. And I think that this is a very underrated aspect of the development of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's why I wrote the book. I was trying to give that moment in Jiu-Jitsu its due credit.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know about the 1991, that whole Luta Libre
That was
Jiu-Jitsu.
huge. Yeah. Actually, it's
For promotion and marketing for Jiu-Jitsu, right?
So that was on national television in Brazil.
Because that's the whole thing, gi or no gi, which is better? Training with the gi or no gi, kind of, in a way.
Yeah, it was. But Jiu-Jitsu said, like, oh, see, this is
because the Jiu-Jitsu representatives, they train with the gi, but then
they take their gi off to fight.
Yeah. And then the no gi guys, they just train
that
no
conflict
gi.
Is the conflict. There's 3 different versions of Jiu-Jitsu these guys are practicing simultaneously. There's self-defense, there's sport gi, and then there's no gi / MMA vale tudo. Okay. Now, in the beginning, these things are not so clearly defined. It's not obvious to them that really it's 3 different practices. But we're seeing that in 2025 because once these things evolve, they evolve what? Because they have different tactics, different strategies, different rules.
Rules, yeah.
They have different evolutionary directions. So you're seeing now the gi, IBJJF world is becoming very separate from the no gi because they're not the same. They're very close, but they're not the same. I think there are more similarities and differences. I recommend my students do both, but I'm watching the sport do this. And then the self-defense thing has gone its own way. And even the no-gi aspect of it has drifted into MMA. The jiu-jitsu for MMA is completely different from jiu-jitsu for, sport no-gi. And you're seeing all these divisions, and I strongly believe that this is a problem that started, there's no moment where this started, but they never had jiu-jitsu clearly defined. This is something Jigoro Kano does. He defines judo. It's changing.
What's the definition?
The definition of jiu-jitsu is there's no definition. Like judo has like a canon. He adheres to a philosophy. Now you can question his philosophy, but he writes it down. This is what I think judo, the purpose of judo is. He makes it clear.
To make it
improvement individual, and as a byproduct, the improvement of society. Like you can, he defines.
Which is that we always talk about this. That's the result, right?
But that's
character training, right?
that is a noble goal. But when you have a professional setting, now it's money, so it's different. They're different philosophies, But so Jigoro Kano does that, and it specifies what judo is, so much so that there's some debate in judo. Even Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a disagreement with judo. Sambo is another one, but for the most part, judo has remained remarkably unified and consistent over 100 years, 150 years, going on 150 years now. Whereas Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is much younger, and you're seeing a lot more division. And I'm not trying to be critical here, but I think these guys made a mistake of not clearly defining what they're doing in writing, because had they done that, there would have been less debate about what jiu-jitsu is. Because right now in 2025, we can't define jiu-jitsu. Like, what the hell is jiu-jitsu? I can have my own definition. You can have yours. But if let's say there's 1 million practitioners around the world, you're going to get 1 million different definitions. There's no one that okay, what is jiu-jitsu? Like, what is that we're doing? Is it the self-defense? Is it ground? Is it no-gi? Are heel hooks legal? Are they part of jiu-jitsu, not part of jiu-jitsu? Lapel guards. Is this functional for a fight? Is it not functional? There's no universal, and this is one reason, Alberto, where I used to be far more critical of the IBJJF when I was younger. Like, as I've gotten older, I've become more supportive because it's the closest thing to an agreement we have ever had about what jiu-jitsu is.
Yeah, true.
Is under them. But without them, there's even less agreement. There's less standards and less agreement, at least under them, and you can criticize them if you want, but there's an agreement about what jiu-jitsu is, and it's going somewhere. There's a direction. I mean, they have the goal. We're going to be the most practiced martial art in the world. I'm like, kudos, let's go.
In Vegas, right, the Jiu-Jitsu Con, how many people this year?
12,000, 13,000.
That's crazy.
Ridiculous. You know what's funny about Jiu-Jitsu Con? I was telling you this story yesterday. I'll share it with the audience. So my mom was like a high-level swimmer. She swam like world championships, national titles. She was a very high-level swimmer. And at last Jiu-Jitsu Con, I asked her to wash the booth for me. My desk people couldn't do it. So, Mom, can you watch? It's your day off. Can you watch the booth for me? Of course, Mom. She's not going to say no. So Mom watches booth all day. At the end of the day, she says, Rob, you guys do this every year? I'm like, yeah. You guys are such an unusual sport. And I'm like, why? She's like, you guys get together every year. It's like a high school reunion every year. And you see your old friends and your old rivals. And you guys hang out. And you see all your, and I'm like, it's true. Like, what other sport does that? Where you have a reunion with people you competed against 20, 30 years ago, and you see them every year, and you get together and you hang out with them for a few seconds. And I realized that was That's my favorite day of the year. It's not my birthday. It's not Christmas, man. It's not New Year's. It's Jiu-Jitsu Con, because that's when I see all my friends.
Master Worlds, right? You see all these old school.
I get together with them, and
some
I leave. I'm so happy.
Aren't, yeah.
I'm so happy there because, sure, I'm there for my students too, but just being around that, my friends. So like, they created this environment for all this to be possible.
Yeah.
And it is the closest thing to unifying the word, defining the term jiu-jitsu as we've ever. We've never had a clear definition.
It's true.
I think at this point, even if you disagree with some of the things,
even like the culture, right? The culture, the Copacabana
the
style.
acai, man.
Yeah.
Bro, I'm seeing acai in Japan and Eastern Europe, man. Like that's a fruit from the north of Brazil.
Amazon, yeah.
You know, there's this little shop in the south zone of Rio in Copacabana, really close to Carlson's gym, called Arataca. That's where the whole thing, the acai World Mania, was born in that little store. Huh? It's like 3 blocks away from Carlson's gym.
What was it called?
Go there. Arataca. It's still there.
Arataca, okay.
And that's the whole acai mania, the global acai mania that you're seeing all over the world. It started in that store.
I fell in love with like BB Sucos when I was in the 90s.
Sucos is a spot. So Arataca is like more old school.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they serve acai anymore. But that's where it started. And these guys would go there after practice. Acai after practice was ritual, you know?
Yeah. Oficina da Guaraná, the Polisucos também, also, yeah.
Brazil has 2 main cultural exports. The first one is Bossa Nova, which is a mix of samba and jazz, for those of you who like music. But the bigger one, in my opinion, has been Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Both of them come out of the south zone of Rio. I think that's a remarkable, because it's a very small stretch of land if you look at it. It's not like maybe 10 kilometers. And Brazil's 2 biggest cultural exports have come out of that same region.
Like, you know, Ginga, the Ginga style of like soccer playing, Brazilian style soccer playing.
You can't translate that term, by the way.
I was going to ask you if you could talk about it or translate it.
Ginga and malandragem are 2 words I can't translate, but I can try to explain them. Ginga is when you watch, let's say, European soccer. They're very practical, objective.
Systematic, German style.
Yes. And then you see Ronaldinho, who's more worried about entertaining the crowd than he is about, I mean, not saying he's not worried about winning, but you know what I mean. Like when we were kids and we played soccer in Brazil, winning was great, but more important than winning was like, you know, like humiliating your rivals, like kicking the ball in between their legs, or, you know, doing something incredible. That was more important than winning. And I think that's part of the Ginga is, can you do this in an elegant way? Can you humiliate your opponent in an elegant way that makes the crowd go like this, right? Joga bonito, they call it. That's very African, really. Ginga is an African word, and malandragem is too, if I'm not mistaken.
The Ginga is like from capoeira, right? The step, right?
It's tricking your opponent into doing something. I mean, it exists in all sports, really, but Brazilians have words for it, so it's very ingrained in the culture to have the sly way of dealing with problems. And there's a negative aspect to that too. When you bring that over to business, that's not okay.
Right.
You know, but in sports, I think it's incredible. It's beautiful to watch these guys making their opponents look silly with body movement and language and just tricking people into doing things they're not supposed to do. And it's very hard to translate that. Brazilians understand. You lived in Brazil, so you understand because you experienced that. But it's difficult to explain to American how ingrained in the culture these things are.
It's funny, right? You were asking me, we were talking about the Americans getting bad calls or whatever, and my experience was definitely like different because I immersed myself so much that I knew all the refs, right?
Yeah.
But one of my friends, Renato Migliacci, who's a high Gracie black belt, judoka also, high level, eventually got on the Greco-Roman team, but he was telling me we were training, and I was training with some of the guys, like some tough guys, and I definitely had like kind of like a Brazilian style, like because like a kind of Ginga style, you know, like clever, you know, you know. And it's like, oh, that's a really nice compliment, you know.
Yeah, no, you absorb it. You absorb. You know what's funny, man? And I'm not saying this is
like
always good.
All systematic. It was like you know, free flowing
and like learning how to untie your belt to take a break. That's malandragem. But it was funny because like when I had a gym in Brazil for 7 years, and I never had to explain any of these things to my white belt students. I never had to explain it. They knew instinctively that if you're tired, you untie your belt. Accidentally untie your belt to take a little break. You do these things to try to like manipulate the match in your favor. It's just very ingrained in the culture. And I never had to explain it. I took for granted that every living human understood this.
Right.
When I opened my gym in the U.S., like I'm realizing a lot of my students are losing events or losing tournaments, and I'm trying to explain to them that you're not playing the rules. Like the guy played the rules better than you. But how do you put that in words without making it sound dishonest? And we were talking about this yesterday. I won't mention the coach's name, but I was cornering against him about a year or two ago. And his student passed my student's guard, and he goes like this: all right, count 19 seconds in your head. Now, why 19 seconds? Because at 20, you're being penalized. But at 19, you're driving on the speed limit. That's how I call it. You're not breaking the rules. But some people are like, oh, that's messed up. And I'm like, well, he did break the rules. Is it messed up? He's playing by the rules.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting 19 seconds. Because at 20, I'm penalized. At 19 seconds, I move a little bit. I can go back. Guess what? I can hold another 19 seconds. You know, and that's something that I don't want to generalize it, but I think Brazilians are more likely to do instinctively.
That was one of the things that me living in Brazil gave me.
Yeah.
Like the malandragem, like Draculino would tell me, yeah, it made you more like smart, street smart. The malandragem, like the being clever, right? That whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Like when I first went to Brazil, the first time, Hanzo Gracie asked me to bring a laptop for his friend. Yeah. So I got to immigration. I was like a teenager, right? And he's like, do you have anything that's not yours? I'm like, oh, actually, I have a friend's laptop. And they took me into immigration for it was my first day there, right? Like 3 hours or whatever, you know. Yeah. And then it's like, I had no, like, no street smarts, but I definitely wasn't, I needed to be,
you have to learn
I developed that, yeah.
And not only that, for you to survive Brazil,
that's it.
Even if you don't use it defensively, you have to understand it because you're going to get eaten alive.
Cutting the lines for, weigh-ins or whatever. If I just let everybody go in, you're never going to get to. So you learn to fight for every inch.
Yes. Yes. And it's funny because I moved to Brazil when I was 5'6", so I absorbed these things. I like to think that I never abused it, but I don't. But like I can spot them. Like I've sort of developed a radar for these things. Right. Like these guys, he's playing the game. Yeah, man. I wish every American could go to Brazil. Me and my friend, a friend of mine is organizing a camp in Brazil. I've been a guest instructor. We're planning on doing it twice a year. Just so it's an excuse for me to go back for a week and see my old friends.
Yeah.
And a lot of my students are excited because it's like an opportunity to go to Brazil, being safe. A lot of people don't know anyone there, so you're being a camp to be safe. And so that's a good opportunity for Americans to check it out. But I recommend everyone go to Brazil at least once especially Rio, to experience a little bit of the origins of Brazilian
Kevin,
Jiu-Jitsu.
he's been going to Sao Paulo, but I was like, you got to go to Rio.
Yeah.
To really experience that.
Yeah.
That Copacabana, you gotta, walk the beaches, understand.
Yeah. And you'll feel it. I think if you just walk the streets of Copacabana for a few days, you'll be like, I think I'm starting to get the Copacabana in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, playing beach volleyball, acai, coconut water,
all of that. And the relaxed manners. If you're 5 minutes late, no one's losing their mind. It's perfectly normal. Now, this is when people ask me all the time, are you more American or Brazilian? It depends. It depends. When it comes to having fun, I'm Brazilian. I like Brazilian way of doing things. But when it comes to working and business, like I don't like to show. I hate being late. I hate people being late. I try to be more structured about my life and be responsible. But it's difficult to balance these things because the Brazilian philosophy is, and again, I'm generalizing. I don't want to say all Brazilians.
Right.
But they have fun first, work second. First, you have fun. Priority is having a good time. And you can worry about work later. Whereas, most people in the U.S. or, most people of European descent will go work first. When you're done working, now you can have fun. And Brazilians have always prioritized fun. And I've always been critical of that. But I see some of my friends who have lived like that. And maybe they don't own a house. Maybe they're broke. But I think they live a happier life than most of us.
Man, I remember
they know how to enjoy life.
When I first went to Brazil, I was in Rio, and these guys, there were like 10 people in a room, and they were so happy. It was something that I never forgot. Yeah. I was like, they're just so happy to be doing whatever. I mean, they're in paradise, but like it's
in the slums. You go up to Cantagalo.
Yeah.
And the happiest people I've ever seen in my life were at the Cantagalo. And I stayed there with Tere. I can't remember, it was something like 2 weeks. I was just staying in the slums with him. It's like, so you get used to little kids running around with guns. The first time you see it, but after a while, you see a 13-year-old with a handgun running up down the street. You're like, oh, it's just, it's like he's carrying a soccer ball or something. You get used to it. But the one thing that stood out to me was the energy there was very, very high. These people are like, they're living in shacks. They don't have like proper electricity. There's no infrastructure. It's a mess. It's dirty. It stinks. But they're happy. And I mean that. You have to go there to see what I'm saying. They're happy people. It's just like they live with very little. But I think because they have no expectations of being a doctor, of being rich, of owning property on the water, like they don't have these dreams. Their dream is to live in the moment. So they live in the moment. They know, and they do it very well. It's music, beer, they grill, they eat well. Whatever money they make, they spend on living well. There's no like, oh, I'm going to save money for tomorrow. Like, there's no tomorrow, you know. And I don't live my life that way, Alberto. But I do think there's some wisdom to that.
Definitely. I feel the same. It's something I never forgot. You know, that was a really big, just eye-opening thing for me to see, experience. You know, as well.
So it's been fun, man. Sometimes I think about going back to Brazil.
To live there?
Maybe to retire. Not to tour. Working in Brazil is difficult.
I know, yeah.
Working in Brazil. I'm happy I had a happy childhood there. My work years were in the U.S.
Key is to be maybe stay mobile, right? Or you can go part-time.
That's what Carlos does.
Carlos,
he's a smart. He's my hero because like he's doing what I would dream of doing.
He comes here in the summer.
You're running from the winter the whole time, and then he goes to Florianopolis in the Brazilian summer. It's genius. Like that's the ultimate, man.
He built. My friend just went down there, and he built this whole resort with hotels and everything. We didn't build it. It's like a long-term lease, but he basically has a hotel. And my friend's son, he kind of quit jiu-jitsu. He got like ultimatum, hey, you better step it up, or maybe give your 2 weeks, And so he's like, oh, I'll give my 2 weeks, and then he was devastated, the dad, and then hey, how's it going? How's your son doing? He's he quit, jiu-jitsu. He's like, what? What do you mean? Your son? He's going with me to Brazil next month. He stayed with my son. He stayed with me. And so he brought him out to Florianopolis. He went out this last month. And he's like, dude, it's ridiculous. He has a whole, like a resort with hotel building. And people, guys just rent out the rooms.
Yeah.
In the south of Brazil.
It sounds
south of Brazil.
So Florianopolis, I've been there twice, but everyone says that that's the place to go. It's like a safer version of Rio, put it like that. So I wasn't there long enough to fully experience
different, though. I went there back in the day in the 90s with them all. We took a bus down to the south of Brazil, and Holz Gracie and Igor were there. They were staying with Hillian Gracie, who was living there at the time. They all kind of raised Holz Gracie's sons, right? Yeah. They took turns or whatever. They float around, right? And so, but I know like Carlos Gracie Jr. That was like the place that he left to be,
Yeah. Yeah, it's sick. I think Jacare Alliance's founder, pretty sure he lives there too.
Oh, he does?
I think so. I think a lot of these guys are like leaving Rio for Florianopolis because it's a better version of Rio. It's a safer version of Rio, and it's the spot, man. I have friends who live out there, and they swear like you go there, you'll never want to come back. It's just
surf,
good food, good weather, beautiful women.
Yeah.
Like it's just for guys, they go down there, they lose their minds very quickly.
Yeah, man. Yeah, what's the future for jiu-jitsu? These next, I don't know. We've 50 years, right, from the beginning of the rule sets. Things have changed so much in the IBJJF. Like the last, what did they celebrated the 20? When it was 97 was the first world championship. 96. So this year is 20 years.
No, 30 years.
I'm sorry, 30. Yeah, 30 years of IBJJF world
championships. Yeah.
And where do you see the next 20 years going? Because like IBJJF is a standard, like you're saying, it's given us the consistency. Of course, ADCC is consistent now. I feel like but not like IBJJF is the kind of it's like a home base, right? For us to we know they're going to be there.
They're not going anywhere. I don't see the IBJJF. I only see them growing. I think they eventually will have like a leadership problem at some point, not anytime soon. But
because of Carlos Gracie Jr.
Everyone's going to pass one day. Like,
right.
You got to have they have very good leadership. That's why they grew. Yeah. These guys grew this like CDM. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
What that guy has done. It's incredible.
When
people give them, I find myself defending themselves all the time. Like, hold up here, man. Look, sure, you can always find flaws in Alberto's life and Robert. Everyone was perfect, man. But when you look at where they were, where jiu-jitsu was in the 90s, where it is today,
do you remember the weigh-ins were at Carlos Gracie Jr.'s house?
I never lived that either, but I remember
the weigh-ins. CDM was doing the weigh-ins in his garage.
Yeah.
And then they put the brackets up on his on his house wall.
Yeah. He grew out of his house. Yeah. And I hear like stories that there'll be brawls in line. There'll be a line, and there'll be like people brawling in line, and it's just like
the whole street. It was like a block party, right? But it's all like jiu-jitsu guys.
And the odds of a fight breaking out were huge.
Well, because Carlson Gracie, Gracie Baja,
breaking out in every other tournament, and it was a very different era. And there's a chapter in the Rise and Evolution. It's called Taming the Ogres. That's Carlos Gracie Jr.'s terminology. We had to tame the ogres. And I thought, because it's true, these guys were like hooligans, and these guys put order into everything. So they deserve their credit for that. But the future, man, I do see jiu-jitsu splitting. I don't want to, you know, the historians some try like think they can predict, because you're seeing these patterns, right? Anyone can predict what's going to happen. But I think it's fair to say at this point, the no-gi scene, professional scene, submission-only scene, it's something very similar to what happened in Brazil in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, where they're slowly parting from, you know, pre-war judo, and they're slowly morphing into something else. I think we see this happening now, and I see this in my own gym, where some of my students only want to do no-gi, and some of my students only want to do gi. Whereas our generation, there's no question, you did both.
Did both,
and probably MMA too, like Vale Tudo, like that was it came with the package. So we've seen that split, and I think that split is not likely to reverse. It's likely to we're likely to continue to drift apart to the point where it's going to be completely different martial arts, like judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are today. They share a genealogy, but they're fundamentally different martial arts. The MMA scene is its own scene. It's gone. I think the IBJJF scene, the gi scene, will be the dominant force, because
the gi
will be. And when people say the gi
lifestyle,
is dead,
when I say
I like, you must be talking about a different planet. Like, I don't know what they're talking about.
I love that reel where the guy's like, I'm here, you know, I'm here in Vegas, you know, and you know, I'm here to go to the ADCC, whatever, and then they say the gi's dead, you know. Yeah, right. Then he goes around the panorama.
13,000 competitors.
13,000.
No, it's just out of the thing
is, funds all these events.
But what the reason why people can say that and believe that is because if you watch professional jiu-jitsu, it's almost all no-gi. It's almost all no-gi. So if you're a young male and your internet algorithm feeds you no-gi professional events because that's what you're getting, you are under the impression that's the whole story. And I do believe the no-gi scene will be more professional and will draw a younger male crowd. But the young male is not only the smaller demographic, it is the worst demographic. The best demographic is the mom and dad and the kids from a business perspective. So it's going to be a much bigger one. It may not be as developed professionally, but in terms of numbers, the gi, I don't see the gi ever being smaller than no-gi because, and I say this someone who's 44 going on 45 now, I used to love no-gi. I don't like it as much as the gi now. I much prefer the gi. Why? I can slow things down a bit. I don't want to move. I'm not 25 anymore, man. So there's longevity to the gi in a way that there is less longevity in no-gi.
Yeah, I hear you. I understand. Like that thing is going in different ways. But just you talking about the gi, like kind of bring in the lifestyle, right? The moms, the dads, and as you get older, right? Like the lifestyle, like the Copacabana, whatever, the whole vibe.
Yeah.
In a way, like brings it all back. Like I'm in the wrestling world with my daughter a lot, you know. So it's like that's like the magic, you know, that piece. Surfer lifestyle around the world.
That's a big part of the appeal, man. You see guys in their 40s, 50s still training, and we were talking about wrestling earlier. I think wrestling is phenomenal. As far as athletes go, everything from methodology to mindset, hands down, the best fighters in the world, in my opinion. And it hurts me to say this. I don't like admitting this,
right?
but the truth is the truth. They're better fighters. And when it comes to because of their mindset,
athletes,
but again, their longevity is what? By the time they're out of college, and I used to talk to these guys, they would rather be in MMA than go back to college. Because I think like it's actually, maybe they think it's easier. But if you go to wrestling practice, man, it's brutal.
Yeah, the American style, Gable style of training, right? The American style.
You can't. Like, it's this right here, and you can only do that for so many years. Like it's like Muay Thai in Thailand. By the time they're 25, they're retired. Like gymnastics, same thing. They start them at 8, 6, 5, whatever.
Right.
By the time they're early 20s, they're done as a gymnast because it's so intense on the body. And whereas Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has less impact than wrestling, for example. So you can extend your longevity on the mats in their 60s. I spoke to Carlos Gracie Jr. a while ago, and he was telling me he was like 67 at the time, and he's saying that he's training like 3 or 4 times a week.
Carlos Gracie Jr.
Carlos Gracie Jr. I think that's at 67, training 3 or 4 times a week. That's incredible.
Yeah.
How many martial artists can say they do that? Like in boxing, does that happen very often? In wrestling,
he's still good.
And I believe you.
He's still good. That foot on the hip, collar sleeve.
Yeah, I believe you. I believe you, man. It's very believable. So I think that's there's a chapter in the book called, it's a quote from Roberto Pedro's book. It's a chapter in his book called The Miracle That Happened. So I quote that same chapter. There's a chapter of my own, The Miracle That Happened. What is the miracle? Why is this so special? So I try to break down the key points of why Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blew up and is on its way to be the most practiced martial art in the world, if it's not already.
Not
it may
already,
not be. Maybe it's still judo, but we're a decade away from changing that.
Well, like in Europe, right? If you're part of the IBJJF, you can't compete in the judo tournaments because they see the growth of jiu-jitsu.
Oh, in France, they're freaking out.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem in France. It's funny that the French story is very interesting. When I first started teaching seminars in Europe, 2005, 6, I taught a seminar in France, and jiu-jitsu tournaments were illegal there. You couldn't even. But later they felt the pressure. They started doing Newaza tournaments.
Right.
Because they feel the pressure. And then later on they changed the rules to allow more groundwork. So they're panicking. They don't know how to deal with the problem. They see the problem. But my point is, the first seminar I taught there, I had 6 people show up. Right, 2005, 6. The last one I taught had over 50 people on the mats. Half of them in judo gis. Black belts, they're wearing black belts. They're in judo gis. These are guys that are leaving judo, okay, and migrating to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is the French Federation panicking because they're losing members left, right, and center to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Why? Because we have a better product. Our product is better. It's more fun. And you go, oh, but a fight starts standing. I'm like, we're not talking about self-defense, MMA. We're talking about people having a good time here. And when it comes to that, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does have a better product. And they don't know how to deal with the problem. So they legalize it for a little while, and they realize it did this right here too fast, and they couldn't control it. So now they're going back to trying to close it.
The product, yeah.
Because it's how do you stop if your competition is better than you?
Yeah.
How do you, other than playing political, Machiavellic scheming, and how do you close that door when the public wants to train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And if they open that door completely, I think BJJ would take over judo in France. 2 decades it might take, but it's going to happen because again, it's a better product. It's an easier product to sell, and there's more longevity to it. How do you argue with that?
Yeah, that's it. There was a little reel that I saw, I think this last week. I don't know if I sent it to you, Kevin, about little kids songs, like if you're happy, if you know it, clap your hands, like that song in U.S. and then a Brazilian kiddie song,
Yeah.
And the kids are watching the TV. If you're happy, if you know, their like eyes are open, like they're just like kind of there, and then the Brazilian song comes on. And they're like jumping around, like happy.
Yeah.
I think that kind of is a reflection of everything we're talking about.
No, it is because it's not just talking about happiness.
We're like having fun.
They're actually clapping and having fun and being happy.
Jumping around, like going.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and I think that's whereas as much as I admire, and I have great admiration for judo. See how organized and like going to judo. You go to Kodokan, it's like going to the Vatican. It's like you're walking in church. Like everything.
Yeah.
And there's a part of that it appeals to me. Whereas, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is like, in some ways, it's the opposite of that. And it can be a little, it was hooliganish for a while.
Right.
It can be unorganized in certain circles.
Judges getting punched.
Exactly. No, I have a friend of mine. I think these are my favorite stories. Like, he started yelling at the ref. He grabbed the basketball and he threw a basketball at the ref. Like, these things don't happen in judo events, But people winning tournaments here and flipping off the crowd, that would never happen in a judo event. So there's some important things about judo. My interview with Satoshi Ishii, I think, highlights some of these things, because they contrast the things about judo that I like that I wish we had more. But I wouldn't want to, and maybe I've changed my mind on this over the years. I wouldn't want to replace the Copacabana culture with feeling like I'm going to the Vatican every time I step on the mats. I like to be relaxed, and I like to think of the gym as a place where I see my friends and I can be myself, and there's no politics, there's no judgment. People are just nice and friendly to me, and I feel at home everywhere I go. Not just my own gym, every gym I go to.
All around the world.
All around the world, I feel like I'm at home. It's rare. It's very unique.
That's it right there. Kazakhstan, wherever you go in the world, Poland.
I was just in Kazakhstan. I didn't. Mats are packed. Like, they have tournaments there with over 2,000 competitors. It's remarkable. I had no idea it was that developed there. I was actually very impressed. And it's not just Kazakhstan; everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah, all over the world.
When we interviewed John Jacques Machado, and he said something that stayed with me. He's like, Carlos Gracie Jr. has been calling this since the early 90s. We're going to take over the world. And he sounded crazy. Even like in the mid 2000s, or the first time I interviewed him, like when he said that, I'm like, yeah, right. But come 2025, I'm starting to think like,
it's taking over. It's just beginning still too.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of room for growth still, and it's. My own gym. I'm terrible at business. If you know me, you know that's true. I'm awful at it. I'm terrible at marketing. I never made an effort. I have people walking through the door every day. I do 0. And I have people walking through the door every day. Like, you know, and I see people that shouldn't be teaching, in my opinion. They don't even know jiu-jitsu, but they're great businessmen. And they're like killing it. They have 3, 4 gyms. I'm like, bro, you never even trained. I know you. You don't have a drop of sweat on your brow. You have 0 injuries, man. You're a phony. But they're good businessmen. They have 3, 4 gyms. They're killing it. I'm like, well, it is what it is. It's a bonanza, man. I hope it stays. It comes with problems. You know, I talk about some of these problems in what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today. It does have some problems. The commercialization has.
We talked about Carlson, and I just want to kind of there's Carlson's in the 50 years of martial arts revolution as well book, but the term creonche that he termed. Could you talk about the term creonche and what that means?
Yeah, man, that's it comes up a lot in the what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today, because the term is taken from a soap opera. It means like a traitor, someone who's like two-faced, you know, and a traitor basically. And Carlson brought that terminology into Jiu-Jitsu because he hated that. And when the term was first translated or brought to the United States, Americans were like, because Americans prize individuality a lot. Americans realize how much we Americans prize individuality and freedom. It's very, very ingrained in the culture. Don't tell me what to do. I'll do whatever I want. And there's some good things to that. There are also some bad things, because if you're thinking about yourself and yourself only, you have no community. How do you build community? Right? When I'm going to bring the Dagestani up again, because I mentioned that because I do think they have better culture than we do in terms of performance, and I think that's their secret. I don't think Khabib knows something me and you don't. It's not. I mean, sure we know things here and there, but I don't think it's technique that they have above us. I don't think it's methodology. I don't think it's genetics. It's they work together and they take their unity and loyalty very, very seriously.
The character things.
And this creates very strong bonds, which is what reinforces the group belief. And if a group of people believe in the same thing, they're very strong together. If the group begins to isolate and everyone goes their own direction,
stronger together, yeah.
You're stronger together. Right? And I do believe fighting is a team sport. So
I agree.
If the creonte word, even though it has such a negative connotation in the English-speaking world, it had an important purpose. If we stay cohesive, we're stronger together. If everyone does whatever the hell they want, we're weaker. And I do believe that for peak individual performance, a strong group is a better foundation. It's a better base than I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. Case in point, I'm from Las Vegas. Las Vegas has some of the best jiu-jitsu and MMA fighters in the world live in Vegas. But do you know how many champions Las Vegas has produced at the highest level? IBJJF, ADCC, or UFC? 1, Frank Mir.
Oh, no way.
Think about it. Everyone else came ready. Name me one other high-level champion that Vegas has produced.
Homegrown.
They're the only one. It's unbelievable. The amount of talent and coaching in Vegas is unbelievable when you think about it, considering the size of Vegas. It has produced one champion from the ground up, Frank Mir, who trained by himself his whole career, by the way. He never bounced around gyms. He had his core little group of guys. That's how he trains. 2 coaches, 3 coaches, 3, 4 training partners. That's it. It's private. He became 2-time UFC champion. The problem with Vegas, and Vegas is a key example of this excessiveness of individuality and even selfishness, I would say, is that people bounce around so much more for political and networking reasons than for performance reasons. And as a result, they weaken the core of the group. And if the core of the group is weakened, and because everyone's thinking for themselves, I think it's difficult to recreate an Dagestani-like environment in a place where everyone's out for themselves. And Vegas has that. Like, people bounce around, like they switch camps, like no problem. It's just very they call it professional. Like, I call it, if you're changing teams because you need better training partners or whatever, that's one thing. But most of the time, it's political and financial.
You can still be loyal. You can still be with your people. You can go train with somebody. Doesn't.
No, it's fine.
I talk to your coach or whatever. Hey, I'm going to go.
There's a way to do these things, right?
Like, have him come in and watch me.
100%. And I like Nick is probably my most successful student right now. He just got his black belt. He needs heavier guys to train with. I'm limited, so like every now and then he'll go somewhere else to train with someone heavier. He's like training with Adam these days. I'm like, fine, it's gonna help him. I don't have an issue with that. But my take on these things is that most of the time it's not for performance reasons. It's politics. It's networking. It's if I follow you, you follow me. Like and once people get caught up in this political networking, it distracts them from their main mission. You're more worried about followers, money, fame, and glory than you are about being great. Because when you worry about being great, everything follows. But if you're worried about how many followers you have, man, you got the wrong mindset. You're not. You don't make it that very far with that mindset.
Going back to the judo Kano's mission, right? To have it be a vehicle for personal development, right? To be the best person you can be, pretty much.
Yeah.
So like going into all these things, it's all like character building things, and so if you're veering off, we're not on track, right? You're not on track.
No, it's 100%. And if a martial art is not doing that, if it's not breeding better individuals and as a consequence better citizens,
right.
It's not doing its job, because I don't believe the purpose of jiu-jitsu, and I talk a lot about this in my books. What is the purpose of jiu-jitsu? It's not. I don't believe it's commercialization. It's fine to make money. I like money too, but when that's the purpose, the problem with having money as the purpose of your practice. So I'm against some of these business guys that come in and like, oh, let's make money. I don't like these guys. I think they're vultures. I think they corrupt the culture. I don't think they're healthy for jiu-jitsu. I don't think they're good for you. I don't care how much money you're making. You're not good for the sport. Because you come in with a set of values that are not, you cannot reconcile business values with martial arts values. You can say you can, but these things will it's like you can root for the Green Bay Packers and the Patriots when they're not playing each other. But at some point, they're going to play against one another. Who's your team? You have to choose your values. And the values of business and the values of a martial artist are not reconcilable, in my opinion. They're in conflict. Now, there is a balance because you have to live. I'm not saying I'm a hardcore martial artist, but I would like to think that I am a martial artist first and foremost and a businessman secondly. And I think a lot of these guys that came late into the sport that didn't live the life that me and you lived, right? They come in with the wrong set of values, and they're shaping the culture because they have money, they're influential, they know how to play the game. So they are a big part of reshaping the culture away from things that me and you learned and took for granted 30 years ago, where they're making it something that it's just very money oriented.
Values, yeah.
And it's a different set of core values that, I mean, we can dive into this more, but it's something I personally don't support. I think it's a negative force in the development of the art.
Yeah. I just try to stay true to myself and what I believe in, what I think is right, and then that focus. There's always going to be different people doing different things, right? Yeah. Kevin, is there anything else that you're?
I want a copy of your book. If you can sign it for me on my way out.
An honor.
I'll read it on the way back.
For sure, an honor.
Yeah.
Little story, right? Going to Brazil as a teenager, being naive.
That was brave, man. I
learning malandragem, learning.
And as a teenager, that takes balls, man. And not a lot of people have that courage to go to a foreign country as a teenager, and that's badass.
Waking up I had to paddle a boat to get to my front yard to get access to my house. I had to take a little ferry. I lived when I first went to Brazil. I lived on Baja, and there's a lagoon, right?
Yeah. And
so there's little islands on that lagoon. And so I had to. It was the Avenida das Americas is the main freeway or the street, right?
Baja, yeah.
Yeah, and so across, so from the beach, it's like 3, 4, or 5 blocks, and then you cross that street, and there's like a gas station, and behind the gas station is an access point for like these little ferries, like little 5 cent, 10 cent to go across the thing.
Yeah.
Then I have to walk across and to the side to get to this boat, so I paddled to my house.
Yeah,
and that was my journey every day.
Sounds like paradise, man. Like,
and I have a picture. I have a picture in the book of my view from my room, and it was paradise.
Dude, that sounds incredible.
There many days where I'm like, what am I doing here? What the heck is this? Because there was no goal, vision. Like, you just loved it.
There's no prospect. You were doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
There was zero prospects for a bright future. It was just like they're living in the moment and loving. Like, I remember that because I
saved my money, gave everything I had to be the best.
You burned the boats. And I remember having that burn the boats mentality when I was like my 19, 20, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. This is it. And I was making my peace with the fact that I was going to be broke and poor for the rest of my life. I'm like, I am probably going to be broke. My dad, like a lot of people in my circle, like, Rob, you got to get a job. You go, make it happen. I'm like, no, I'm doing this. And I think a lot of people were a little surprised that I was that engaged in jiu-jitsu. But to me, it was a burn the boats mentality. It's like, if I end up poor, that's okay. Because I love this too much. I'm having too much fun. And I can't imagine myself doing anything else. But it does sound like you had it better than me, man. I was like in a small town in the middle of São Paulo. You were living in a lagoon
and
with
Rio de Janeiro, right? Rio de
man.
Janeiro, right? Rio de Janeiro and the you know, the Mecca.
I would have kept that going for as long as I could.
I see 6 months, and then I met Draculino, and then I was like, oh, I really liked it here because it was all black belts. So it was like the Husu, Holeto, everybody was there at the time, and I was just golden age, and I was just like a kid, right? And I needed some like mentorship, you know, and so me meeting Draculino, and he was just starting out his gym, so it was all white belts and like a blue belt, like my friend Edson, who has the legacy in San Diego, and just fell in love with the people and the community, and I just felt like part of the team. Whereas in Rio, I was just another gringo, you know. Yeah. But in Belo Horizonte, I became one of them.
Like one of them.
Yeah.
Well, by then you were probably speaking a little Portuguese too, and I think that.
Yeah, at the beginning I wasn't, but they just treated the Mineiros, like the state, right? Yeah. They're very like hospitable. Yeah. Yeah, and very known
for that.
Yeah. Very nice, and so. I don't know. I just felt at
home.
I felt at home.
That's awesome.
Talk about intuition, right? What you feel, and I just felt like this is right.
Yeah.
And Draculino, right at the time, I don't know what he was going to be, but he became one of the best coaches in the world, right? With his work, life's work.
We were talking about this yesterday, but I chose him intentionally. I left a few coaches out that I consider to be high level.
Shout out to Draculino right here, Bobby.
But I always look up to him because I notice these things. I'm very big on meritocracy. It's very important to me that people, a good coach to me is someone that can teach an awkward, uncoordinated white belt how to shrimp and one day get him on an IBJJF podium. Yeah. Even if it's not a world championship, an ADCC world title, I think if you can consistently do that, that makes you a great coach. In the case of guys like Draculino, Julio Cesar, Zé Radiola, Rodrigo Feijão, Paulo, the list is on and on and on. Man, these guys have been doing that for 3 decades. Consistently bringing it up from the bottom up. They do it every year. There's a new great guy coming up. And as an observer, as a coach myself, I aspire to be that. Like, that's what I want to be. I want to be like Draculino in that sense. Like, I haven't put out nearly as many good guys as he has, but like, it's what I aspire to be as a coach. My fighting days are behind me. I want to be that coach. And I think there's a level of commitment there as a coach that a lot of people miss. Because, for example, for you to land at let's say a Alberto Crane or a Romulo Barral or a Felipe Pena, you know how many people you have to screen through and train and dedicate yourself to land at one of those guys? For out of 200 students that you dedicate your life to, one of them may or may not shine. But the other 199 took a ton of your time and energy because you don't know who the one is. You have an idea. But as a coach, if you're fair and you're just to your students, you will dedicate yourself equally to all 200. One of them will shine. He may or may not give you credit. It's not why you're doing it. You have to learn that as a coach, and I learned that the hard way. You don't do it for expecting anything. You take joy in giving. And if you're able to learn how to do that and taking joy in giving and not expecting anything in return, you'll be fine. But if you do like me, where you expect gratitude, you'll burn yourself because you're not going to get it. They will forget very quickly that you dedicated yourself to the 199 equally to get at them. And they think that the whole along, it was all about them. And they don't understand why you're dividing your energy in 200 of different ways because they think they're special. Everyone is the main character of their own novel. Yeah. So they think, they don't see the other 199 you dedicate yourself to. So when guys like these guys, these coaches we're talking about, they can do that for 30 years and continue to do it. I'm like, I don't think people realize how hard this is, man. Like how much work it is. This is way harder than being a competitor. I think so.
He got his coral belt this last month, right? My friend I was telling you went down. His son is down there now in Florianopolis, and he just happened to get there that day. So he was there when Draculino got his coral belt, and he's emotional. Draculino's like he's like crying like a baby, and just with that talk about those 30 years, like the ups and downs, and people being ungrateful, people being grateful, just everything, right?
Like we were speaking last night, the key I think is learning how to see the glass half full, because most of the people around you are loyal. They're good people, man. They love you for who you are. But I don't know, maybe I'm more negative. Like I for some reason, like the one negative comment outdoes the 20 positive ones. Like the one negative person weighs more than the 20 people. And then you have to change that mindset. Like, it's a very difficult thing to do. But I have to change that mindset too. It's like, man, look at all the amazing people I have around me. So what? Yeah. One of them is shitty. 2 of them are shitty. Fine.
That's it.
your loss. I was a true friend. I was a good coach. The loss is yours.
That's it.
It is better to suffer an injustice than to commit one. I'd rather be on this side than that side. I'd rather be me than you. Life goes on, and easier said than done. But I think that's the noble route, is to just shake it off and
the
get
correct
back
route,
on.
right? Happiness and peace, and that's it, man. So thank you so much for your time today. This week, I want to just kind of do the first book is the Open and Close Guard.
Open and Close Guard, which is a story of jiu-jitsu, but also like me getting involved with the documentary and all that. It's more of a traveling journal.
Starting from your doc that turned into a blog to a whole book.
Yes, and it's more of a travel journey, and then
we're going to the Carlson Gracie, the rise and evolution of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
And then the third one is what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today?
Well, it's hard to say third and fourth because I wrote them simultaneously.
Okay.
I think of the triumph of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the hardcover one, as a sequel to this one.
Okay.
They complement each other.
Okay.
This is an extension of chapter 8 of this book is an argument about the rule set and its importance. And rereading the book, I realized that I had not gone deep enough in that argument. So I wrote something else with pictures. So this is think of this book as a long footnote to chapter 8, that with pictures, so I can better explain my point of how we transition from one form of judo to another, until we finally got to what we now refer to as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's been a slow evolutionary process. And the last one, which would be like the fourth in the sequence, even though it was written before this one, is what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today. It's more contemporary Jiu-Jitsu, the politics that you would see on social media. I try to dive into some of these issues a little deeper and just talk about the things that have changed, what is vulgar about the present and what is polished about the past, and distinguish these things. Not everything about the past was great, not everything was bad. Same about the present. Let's learn how to distinguish between good and bad regardless of chronology.
Well, awesome. Look forward to visiting you in Vegas one of these days.
Anytime, bro. Always welcome. Your students, you're like people. People. Listen, I'm not very political when it comes to jiu-jitsu. I've always welcomed everyone, and it's. I love having visitors, man. I'm always honored when people visit my gym, and I make new friends, and you guys are always welcome. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Man, it's a pleasure. Thank you.